Hi, it's Dave from Moods of Overland. Today we'll rank the mid-Atlantic states in the US and find out which are best for overlanding. So let's go. For the purposes of this exercise, this is how I defined mid-Atlantic. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. This is where I spend most of my time. Being from Pennsylvania means I'm centrally located for overlanding in this region. Here's how I decided to score the states. I used a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best. The categories are motorized recreation friendliness. That's indicated by if there are ATV, OHV, dirt bike, etc. trails on public lands. That's weighted at 15% of the total score. Scenic and remote, which is something that overlanders are always looking for. So that's based on public forest and park acres per capita, and that's weighted at 25% of the score. Camping, which is a key part of overlanding, a preference given here to dispersed motorized camping over campgrounds, also weighted at 25% of the score. Next category is public land management and information. Basing this on the number of different agencies there are managing the lands, lower is obviously better, and the availability of public use information on the official government websites. This is weighted at 15% of the score. Lastly, the national forest bonus. So I give extra points for national forests in the states, particularly because they have true dispersed camping, and I weighted that at 20% of the score. So let me know if you agree with this model or if you change something in the comments. But let's get to the states. First up is New York. As I go through each state, I'm going to discuss the score for those categories and how I arrived at it. As a note, in that national forest bonus category, I'm using 1 for no national forest, 2 for 1 national forest, and higher scores for having more than 1 national forest. So looking at New York in terms of motorized recreation friendliness, there's no ATV use, dirt bike, side-by-side, etc. use other than connector trails that the state seems to define as something that might go through public lands that's connecting other private lands, or for people with disabilities. So they get a 2 here. Scenic and remote, there's less than a 1/4 acre per person, so we're going to give them a 2 here as well. Camping, seems like it's really only campgrounds outside of the national forest. Some of those can be somewhat spread out, but they still consider them as single campgrounds with multiple sites. Public land management and information, they have 2 agencies that are doing the management, and it's not a great web experience in terms of finding some of that information. The reservation system is okay for camping though. And on the national forest bonus, they do have 1 national forest, Finger Lakes, and so they get a 2 here. New York's a pretty big state, and once you get outside of the city, there are some beautiful areas there. New Jersey, the Garden State. So from a motorized recreation friendliness perspective, there's no ATV use in the state on public land, so they get a 1. Scenic or remote, 0.16 acres per person, not great, so a 1 here as well. Camping is campgrounds only. Some of them are rustic in the state forests, so they get a 2. Public land management and information, there's 2 agencies. The websites are a bit easier to navigate than the worst, but they're not great on being informative, so a 3 here. And for the national forest bonus, there aren't any national forests in New Jersey, so they get a 1. With the exception of the Pine Barrens, New Jersey feels pretty congested. There are some limited opportunities to drive on the beach, though, so that's a plus. On to my home state of Pennsylvania, the Keystone State. From a motorized recreation friendliness perspective, they're really good. They have designated trails in several state forests. They have an upcoming forest tract dedicated to motorized recreation, including 4x4, side-by-sides, ATVs, dirt bikes, etc. And they have trails in Allegheny National Forest, so they get a 5 here. Scenic and remote, a bit less than half an acre per person, so they get a 3. Camping, they do have dispersed motorized camping at designated sites in state forests, and there's true dispersed camping in Allegheny National Forest, so they get a 4 here. Public land management information, they do really well here. There's a single agency, the DCNR. They have good maps and other information that's easily found and pretty well organized on their website. And as mentioned, they do have a national forest, Allegheny National Forest, so they get a score 2 here for the national forest bonus. Pennsylvania gets top scores for friendliest to motorized recreation and the public land management information, plus a 4 on camping. As I noted, the DCNR puts out great public use maps, and it's definitely a contender. Moving on to Delaware, the first state. Motorized recreation and friendliness, there's no ATV use here, so they get a 1. Scenic and remote, 0.14 acres per person, not great, so a 1 here as well. Camping, there really isn't motorized camping in the state. There's places you can park and walk into sites. The public land management and information, it is a single agency, and they do have maps and other information that's pretty easily found on the site, so they get a 3. No national forests in Delaware, so they get a 1 for that bonus. Delaware doesn't have much public land to begin with. It's a small state compared to its mid-Atlantic neighbors. They do a good job of providing information about their public lands, but ultimately they have a hard time competing here. I would stick to their nice beaches and wetlands. Next is Maryland. And from a motorized recreation and friendliness perspective, they're not bad. They actually have designated trails in several state forests, so they get a 3 here. They have just over a 1/4 acre per person of public land, so a 3 on that category as well. Camping, they do have designated primitive sites in state forests, so a 2. And public land management and information, there are 2 agencies. The websites aren't great, so I'm giving them a 1 in that category. And on the national forest bonus, they don't have any national forests, so they get a 1 there as well. Maryland doesn't really excel in any of these areas of the ranking. It beats out New York on public acres per person, and it's one of the more friendly states to motorized recreation, though. There are some state forests here worth visiting, like Green Ridge. Virginia, let's talk about Virginia next. Motorized recreation friendliness. They've got designated trails on public land at the state level and the county level and in national forests. So they've kind of got all the bases covered. They get a 5 here. Scenic and remote, more than an acre per person of public land. So they get a 4. Camping, the dispersed is primarily in the national forest, but they do have primitive campgrounds in the state forests. So they get a 4 here. Public land management information, single agency, maps and other information are easily found on their website, so a 5. And they get a 2 on the national forest bonus because they have 2 national forests, George Washington and Jefferson, so they get a 3. They have top scores for motorized recreation friendliness and public land management information, just like Pennsylvania. It has a lot more acres per person, though, at 1.18 versus the 0.37 that Pennsylvania has, and the advantage of 2 national forests. Once you get outside of the DC Beltware area, it is a lot to offer mid-Atlantic overlanders. West Virginia, last but not least. So here, the motorized recreation friendliness is a 4. They do have designated trails on state public lands. Scenic and remote, they're topping it out here, 2.24 acres per person. That's a 5. Camping, mostly campgrounds outside of the dispersed camping and national forests. They get a 4, though. Public land management and information. There's just one agency managing those public lands. The website's just okay for public use and information, but they get a 4 here. And the National Forest bonus, like their neighbor Virginia, they have 2. So they get a 3 in this category. So the state that John Denver sang about in Take Me Home has a lot to offer for overlanders. It is way more acres of public land per person than even Virginia, with that 2.24 versus 1.18. So it gets a top score there, and 4s for just about everything else. The 2 national forests include Monongahela, which has the Dolly Sods Wilderness that's a must visit in the Mid-Atlantic. Here's a summary of the scores for all the states. The Mid-Atlantic definitely deserves attention from overlanders, car campers, 4x4 enthusiasts. I'd also like to point out that support from enthusiasts of 4x4s, ATVs, dirt bikes, etc., is a real boon to the former coal communities in the Appalachian regions of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Virginia. So please consider visiting and supporting the local businesses there, as increasingly that's what's keeping their economies going in the small towns of Appalachia. So who wins the top honors? Let's find out. Let's start with the 3 states outside of the top 3. So we have Delaware coming in at number 7, New Jersey, Maryland at 5, and New York at 4. These states have much less public land per person. They're generally unfriendly to motorized recreation, with the exception of Maryland, and don't have as much of the dispersed camping that overlanders seek. New Jersey honestly would have been dead last if it didn't have better camping opportunities than Delaware. From firsthand experience, New Jersey simply isn't as friendly to motorized public land use. They don't make information about legal trails available, and are in the process of, it seems, trying to restrict access further to some of their state forests and set up a permitting system for 4x4 use, or really any motorized use of some of what are really public roads and trails now. If Delaware had more space, they would likely place much higher than New Jersey. Okay, let's get on to the top 3. In third place, Pennsylvania, my home base. As we mentioned, it has a great combo of scenic and remote areas. It's got a national forest, along with being very motorized recreation friendly, and probably the best and most accessible public information available on their websites about their parks and forests. And as noted, you can't get much more motorized recreation friendly than opening an off-road park on newly acquired state forest land, which is something that looks like it's going to either happen in the fall of 2023 or in the first half of 2024. It's running a little bit behind. First and second are separated by less than 1/10 of a point. It's hard to beat the combination of scenic and remote experiences in these states, and both have 2 national forests in addition to their state and public lands. So it's unsurprising that one of them came out on top. Obviously, we're talking about Virginia and West Virginia. They also do well in terms of being friendly to motorized recreation. Even the county's getting in on ATV and 4x4 trails, and availability of public use information. In the end, only one of these states can win. We have West Virginia coming in at 2nd. So we know what that means. Virginia is the winner in this competition. They come in first place. Overall, I feel like within a single place, this ranking feels about right. If you've got different opinions, let me know in the comments. I'd love some discussion on this topic. Hear what you all think, but I would recommend packing up your gear and planning to take some trips to Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Virginia as we get into the fall and really in any season. So that's it for this ranking of the best Mid-Atlantic states for overlanding. If you found this useful, please like the video, and to see more Mid-Atlantic overlanding content, please subscribe. See you out on the trails.